All right, so I just shot you over the link. Um, I'm looking at it on YouTube now, and like, if you don't find it weird with like the little window elements, like it's fine. But
I mean, dude, it's better than us just sitting there awkwardly. I just need a link. Where'd you send it to me? Oh, in the chat.
it should be in the chat, and then
Yeah,
I
you
can also
sent it
Slack
to
it to you.
everyone. That's all good.
All right, so I'm about to share this to the Eventbrite guests as well.
Cool. How many people did we register?
Like 146.
Oh, cool.
I doubt we'll get that many on though, but
Yeah, I
it's
know.
a pretty solid number.
I'll be back in a few.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, Emma, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's been a little bit. How have you been?
It has. Things have been good. Busy, but good.
Good, good.
Here he
Cool.
is. Here's Matt.
Cool. Well, I know you only have a few minutes too. I'm just gonna say that I think I talked with Matt this morning, Ben. Let me know what you think. I'll just give a little upfront, just like he's saying, why we're here, who I am, briefly say we're gonna be with Ben and Matt today, and here's what we're gonna be talking about, what the basic is. And then I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, just to kick things off. And then I'll just jump right into what led to this initiative and why you reached out to Basic, just to give you some runway and understand like that's maybe where we'll start. So how do you feel?
Awesome.
Does that sound cool?
That sounds fantastic.
Cool. I had to just clean up my room a little bit in here. I realized there was just like some miscellaneous objects just strangely on the.
I win that front. I had a handyman over drilling in my house, and so I had to quickly go to my neighbor's house.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. And no, I'm excited, guys. This will be fun. Hi, I was on mute trying to talk. Excited to get this going. I know we're live with a couple people right now, so.
Great. Well, great to see you, Matt.
Yeah, you too, guys.
I'm jealous of those headphones, Matt. What are you rolling there?
Yeah, so these are B&O, and I absolutely love them. They're the i9s. And what's crazy is the other day I was in a meeting and my music was still playing. I realized that no one else can hear it, but I can still. So it's like a blessing when you're listening on meetings, but you're not. Yeah. So they're pretty solid, man. They've got great quality, and I'm a fan.
They look great.
Thank you, bud. Hey. All right. Emma, you're muted up, but ready whenever you are.
Me too.
Good to go. Everybody can hear?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. Super excited to be here with you all. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We'll just start kicking things off with some introductions. So my name is Emma Santangelo. I am a senior strategist at Basic, and I will be the host for the conversation today. And before we get started and give you some background and let these guys introduce themselves, I'll just give a brief introduction. First, to who Basic is, if you're not familiar with us. We are an independent branding and experience design company that works at the intersection really of culture, design, and technology, and really pride ourselves on building products and services and e-commerce experiences, which we'll be focusing on talking about today, that really turn cultural value into company value. So we had the pleasure recently of working with the Herman Miller team and the Design Within Reach group on a recent web design project. And so today will really be a live conversation between our CEO and founder of Basic, Matt Faulk, and the Chief Digital Officer of the Herman Miller Group, Ben Groom, all about the process kind of behind the build of the new DWR.com. And we'll talk also a bit just about the client agency relationship and the state of e-commerce and really what it takes to win in today's landscape and where it might be heading in the future. So you'll be hearing a bit from me, but mainly from these two. So Matt and Ben, do you want to start by introducing yourselves?
Yeah, Ben, go ahead, buddy.
I was going to say you, Matt, but sure, I'll take it away. So first, thanks, Emma, for hosting this, and thanks to everyone for joining. So as you said, I'm our Chief Digital Officer for the Herman Miller Group. And I might spend a moment first talking about the group. I think most people are probably familiar with the brand Herman Miller. We are a vertically integrated, manufacturer right through to retailer of some of the world's best and most iconic furniture and lifestyle products. We make, and sell many products that I'm sure many of you are sitting in right now, particularly the Aeron chair, the Eames chairs, Nelson benches, you name it. So it's a really proud company, about 114 years old, and really has been a platform for commercializing great design all through that lengthy history. But we're actually a collective of 9 brands, which of course, as we're talking about today, includes Design Within Reach. And we have several other brands such as Hey, which is a recent acquisition of ours, that is a great, accessible Danish brand that we're very excited to now have as part of the portfolio. I'm our CDO. I've been with the company about 1.5 years. I'm our first CDO, and responsible for many things that chief digital officers are responsible for: e-commerce, digital design, digital marketing, engineering, as well as data and analytics, which is an exciting part of our strategy going forward. And Matt?
Yeah, awesome. So I'm Matt Faulk. I'm the founder of Basic. Over the last 10 years, I've been trying to build one of the best agencies on the planet, and we're making progress and strides. And in my role, I really kind of define the vision of where we're going, as well as kind of get involved in key accounts. And so when we talked to DWR and Herman Miller, it was a brand that I was deeply passionate about, and so I was executive sponsor and heavily involved in the strategic phase of the project, as well as some initial kind of conceptual directions. And then I've also overseen programs from brands ranging from Google to Apple, Beats by Dre, Under Armour, and PlayStation. So I have a pretty well-rounded experience, both in driving digital flagships as well as understanding how brands can differentiate. So I'm excited to chat about our process as well as where we see things going in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both so much. This is going to be fun. I'd like to just kind of start things off at the beginning, really. And Ben, kind of throw it over to you and really just ask, what led to this initiative, and why did you first reach out to Basic?
Yeah, so it really goes back to probably May last year when we relaunched our overall corporate strategy as a company, and we put our building a much more customer-centric, digitally enabled business model is one of the key pillars of our new strategy. So that kicked off a range of initiatives, but the one that's most relevant to this conversation is, we decided in the middle of last year and began executing in probably September last year, a complete e-commerce overhaul. We run about 15 e-commerce sites around the world, and we decided that we wanted to make sure that they were industry leading, which at the time, whilst they had many strengths, we didn't feel like we were industry leading in e-commerce. So we decided to do, a full refresh of our technology stack, or certainly looking at our technology stack. We wanted to bring on board, a great design partner, a great implementation partner. So Basic is obviously the design partner, and begin a roadmap of basically refreshing all of those sites, and making sure that it was grounded in a very rich amount of customer research. So like most people would do in our situation, we went out to a range of agencies with a request for proposal, and we started meeting with different companies. And I would say that it was pretty early on in our conversations with Basic that we felt like we'd found the right partner. And I would say that probably the biggest thing early on was just we felt like we were in a conversation with them rather than being kind of presented at. And obviously, as Matt has alluded to, they've basically a great track record for building industry leading sites. So we had a good look at the sites that Basic has built in the past, and we really could align with the design direction and the process, and we kicked off that partnership late last year. And happy to go into more detail about how it's worked, but that's how we got going.
No, it was fun, Ben. And one of the things I loved about how you guys ran the process is you kind of let it be open. You didn't give too much of a pointed scope. You kind of high leveled how we might go about it. And it was kind of fun just kind of trying to understand what we're trying to achieve and where and how we might be a fit. And I think for kind of the audience listening in too, whether you're on the agency or the brand side or just kind of learning what's happening, I think what was really fun about it was the ambiguity around it to kind of allow the partnership to take form naturally versus kind of falling into kind of preconceived buckets, because it really allowed the Herman Miller team to really see what agency they felt would be right for them. And then for us, it gave us a sense for the culture, because ultimately, in a world where co-creation matters, where, Ben was looking for someone to kind of help activate their in-house experience and bring expertise from the outside in. I think it allowed us to kind of look at how we might shift a model. And I mean, Ben, do you want to talk about how we formed the model too, just at an agency partnership level?
Yeah. And even before I get to that, Emma, I didn't mention this in my intro, but I'm a former consultant, right? So I know kind of what to look for and what to look out for, to kind of what to watch out for, I should say, in vendor relationships and partnerships. And so, for me, I think it starts with, does the organization have the track record and trying to deliver on what you hope to do? Secondly, are they listening, right? And I think it's very easy to give a consulting partner a brief and then to hear it played back very differently, right? And to feel like they're trying to push on you a cookie cutter solution because they've done it in the past. I think third is, around culture and particularly for me personally, like a key counterpoint. So you mentioned, Matt, that you're the executive sponsor on this piece of work. That's very important for me. I know people out there listening right now, we're all scrambling, right? We're all trying to build a lot very quickly, and we all have a range of partnerships that we're trying to manage. The ability to know that you've got someone senior in that organization really watching the project like a hawk, and knowing that you can text them or call them at most hours of the day, like I tend to do, Matt, is really important. And then I think the final piece, which is kind of the question you're asking, is skin in the game.
Yep.
So we really tried to align our structure to ensure that we were, had really aligned incentives, and we were really clear. And part of that is, I think, what people always do, which is being very deliberate and thorough and consultative on what are the actual deliverables, right? I think people spend a lot of time on what's the scope, but what are the actual specific deliverables? So we did that, and I think many people focus on that. But the key thing that I think was very unique, and it's the first time I think you guys had done it, Matt, and I've certainly heard it's very unique for the industry, is we attached a degree of how Basic is compensated for the work to actual performance.
Yep.
So we set up an element of the contract to focus on post-launch performance of the site, and I think it's we're going to get into the future of e-commerce later, but I think this is probably a trait that we're going to see more and more of in these types of relationships.
Yeah, no, it's been fun, and it really gave us just that idea of co-creation. We really got together and talked about where we wanted to go, and had some skin in the game to really push the envelope and understand business requirements, and it kind of just forged naturally the partnership. And so excited to talk about how we kind of did the work together.
Yeah, and I think some of what you were mentioning, Ben, really, and even in the introduction, was just about really the importance of setting expectations, not just a line item in a scope, but really a deeper strategy that roots the design in something meaningful and connects back to both the brand and business goals. And so it'd be great to hear at a strategic level, Ben and Matt, just sort of what kind of collective goals you aligned upon and what your vision was for the site in that respect, and how the strategy was really integral in kicking off the process together.
Yeah, look, I think the overarching goal was obviously focused on building a brand new DWR.com, and making sure that it was delivered, on time, on budget, with, in a very kind of customer-centric, industry leading design. But I think when you think about the actual attributes that went into that, one was just how we managed the team. We didn't want it to be, all external or all in-house. We really wanted to try and get that balance of co-creation with an agency. So that was an element of it. We wanted to be really grounded in customer research. And I'll be the first one to admit that, I've been through some of these processes in the past and felt like, we say we're doing customer journey mapping and we run some interviews, but largely it ends up being lip service. And that's probably the piece that I'm most proud of here, is that we spent hundreds of hours, literally hundreds of hours. So I think the final stat, and this is at the point of launch, we've done more research since launch in terms of improvement, but I think at the point of launch, we'd interviewed 110 customers of all different varieties, which constituted 200 hours of direct customer research, right? And what was really exciting for me about that is, that was largely a Herman Miller led effort, but I just felt like what we had was this. So we took that research, we created customer journey maps. Not only did we create customer journey maps, and I think we ended up with 12 for this project, we actually took from those customer journey maps all the requirements that our customers were looking for. We even quantitatively ranked them in terms of how often they were mentioned and how important they were in these customer interviews, which included UAT and other parts of the customer research process. And then we spent hours and hours and hours kind of staring at those customer journey maps and looking at those lists of requirements with Basic. And then, of course, Basic, has been working with a range of different companies recently, and kind of, I feel like, has a great sense of best practices in the marketplace and certain things that they know that will end up helping the customer that maybe the customer doesn't realize themselves, right? And it's that combination of inputs that resulted in the design. So that was a really exciting process, and for me felt like the opposite of lip service. It was very grounded. I think we were very humble in a few places. I was quick to say at the beginning of this process, we'll have augmented reality, and that'll be really important to, for people to see their sofa in their living room. But no one mentioned it once in the customer research, right? And whilst trust me, we will have that at some point, it wasn't at the top of our customers' priority list. And based on, what Basic brought to the table, we actually deprioritized it.
Yeah.
So it felt like a very kind of thorough process. I don't know, Matt, what you thought
No,
about it.
It was awesome. I mean, we work with quite a few different groups, you mentioned them, but what we loved about coming into this relationship is that you guys had your foundational work. And one of the things too that we wanted to do is maximize efficiency and think about how do we leverage the stuff you have and really build on top of it. And so, like you said, when you guys brought us in, it was great seeing kind of, all the different journeys. And what we actually started doing is identifying by taking a step back and just kind of looking at, well, we have all these different user journeys, but where are the common areas, or where's the high value moments that we can bring value to all of them, and then get specific as well. And that's where we identify the consideration state. There's just an abundance of options online, not just within DWR, but even across brands and other competitors. And so how do we kind of really elevate consideration to kind of turn them from browsers into buyers? So I think that was interesting. Secondly, as you mentioned, was, we had a feature list initially that was just insane. It was just so large and massive, not just at the design scope, but also for the tech side. And so how we worked with you to figure out, okay, where we really want to put the effort based on these experience briefs we designed or defined, how do we want to kind of go about making sure that we're bringing the most value to these moments based on the journeys? And then from that, what are the utilities, services, and offerings that we want to service to the people in the right time and the proper context? And so by establishing that foundation, it really kind of created the brief itself. So that way our team could just get to creating. And then, like you mentioned, I think you did a bunch of research beforehand, which is great, but we also believe in doing it throughout, which we did. We created a bunch of prototypes, tested everything from product configuration to the checkout flow. I mean, we had navigation paradigms. So throughout the experiences we were building, we were iteratively testing and iterating. And so there was no real true point until we decided to ship, which even then it was like, okay, how do we really want to continue to kind of test and iterate and progress for what's next? So I think the foundation that you guys led and how you brought us in to listen to our perspective on the foundation you had, I think is what really laid just a great foundation for us to go and build something special.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And I think, we're talking a lot about, oh, I'm sorry, Ben, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. You go, Emma.
Okay, sorry, I hope I don't have a lag. Yeah, I think, we're talking a lot about collaboration and the importance of iterative strategy and iterative design as we move, into each stage of the process. And I think it'd be great to talk a little bit about, part of how that strategy did come to life and how that collaboration really kind of made everything sing, and getting into a little bit more detail around some of the things that we actually ended up authoring together. And so I think one of the things that Matt was just speaking to was something we probably uncovered during, the customer research in that phase around this idea of people wanting to author their own design, right? And really having this sense of, design isn't just something that you just buy and put in the corner, right? It's really a process that you go through, and it's emotional and it's rational. And there's a lot that goes into that. And so I think this idea of highlighting design expertise for the part of Design Within Reach was really important to communicate in that same vein, and really to make the site successful. So how did you, navigate that? What was the dialogue? How did the team land on what to highlight?
I might jump in on that because it was fun kind of seeing the work that, sometimes internal brands don't see it from the outside. And so I think that was what was great about kind of coming in and looking at the industry in general is, furniture is becoming commoditized. But yet for a brand like Herman Miller, which values the craft, the authenticity, some of the most iconic furniture designers of all time, have contributed to this brand. And so what we wanted to kind of understand is, okay, so as people become more price mindful and really aligned to experiences over possessions, there's a less perceived value in what DWR and Herman Miller are selling, but that's actually not the reality, because there's a huge cultural trend happening, and we always want to create things that solve tension in the culture. Well, furniture design and interior design has really taken off. It's actually becoming a very, very popular thing because of the opportunities around social media to curate your own lookbooks, Pinterest, saving things. And then the idea of creating your space. And this is pre-COVID, when you actually want to create the space that you live. And so we realized that the process and what goes into identifying how to create the story of your home and the story of your life is something very, very unique. And therefore, as you go through picking options that will fit into that, it's not about the object itself, but the actual idea of creating it and what you value around authenticity and service and things. And so we really wanted to kind of create a site that was both inspirational and as well as educational, to really kind of create something that, people were there and enjoying that process, they could kind of convert. And so Ben can tell you far more about the brand and its legacy and heritage. But as we thought about the site as a metaphor and what we could do was the idea of authoring your own home and what that could do around the site as we kind of establish our experience strategy.
Yeah, and if I can pile onto that, I think another thing that we've really tried to drive here is to bring the best of our customer service and design expertise from a brick and mortar environment to our much larger audience online, right? And it's amazing that we spent so much time working on this pre-COVID, and then suddenly it became a necessity, which I can talk more about. But for those of you who have been to a Design Within Reach physical location, you have extremely experienced and often highly educated, in terms of design education, account executives. And they know our product cataloging inside and out. They know, what kind of leather is going to patina well over time, what kind of, wood grain will look great with the rest of your room. It's a little known fact, but they will happily do 3D renderings of your space for you for no cost whatsoever. And it's almost, we like to think of it, it's almost like an art gallery experience where you have a curator who's helping you build out your home, or as you rightly articulate, build out the story of your home, Matt. But I'll be honest, that wasn't evident in the old version of our e-commerce experience. There were these very static product pages that didn't have the same richness that you would have if you were having a conversation, right, with an account executive in one of our locations. So for me, and it relates back to the kind of consideration phase that was so important in our customer research and really the key area we had to address. I think there are two big things that we did. One is rolling out and really integrating next generation chat. Yeah. So you'll see it, go onto dwi.com, you'll see the pop-up in the bottom right, which is, speak with an in-store account executive. Now that is not a bot. That is a real in-store account executive that probably has an interior design, training background and probably has been an interior designer at some point. And not only can you begin chatting with them, but you can, from the site, do a phone call or a video chat with that account executive. So, particularly during this COVID period where we've had to move to more of a by appointment model, it's been so useful to have, we call them AEs, our account executives, be able to literally have a FaceTime experience with you throughout the site, throughout the store, or the studio as we would call it. So you can really get to look at the product, they can talk to you about the product, and to have that at the same time that you can browse our very broad catalog as you want through the new site is a pretty powerful combination. And I think, again, speaks to where e-commerce is going. The other thing, and this is one of my favorite features of the new site, Matt, there are places where, so if you're configuring a product on our product page, so let's say you choose an ebony wood and you're trying to get this certain leather grain, and for some reason that combination is not possible. It has the kind of the crossed out on the the option that you're trying to, on the configurator, like it'll just say you can't choose that option. We've now built a feature, which is the first, I've never seen this on another website, and you may correct me if it's been done elsewhere, Matt. But if you try and click on that and you can't, it'll automatically pop up the chat to connect you directly with an account executive so you can have a conversation about it. And it may mean that you just need to do some kind of special order, which obviously we can facilitate through a conversation. But for me, that really speaks to bringing the kind of best of our customer service, to the online experience, which is really powerful. The second piece is just the product pages themselves. We spent a lot of time researching these products even beyond what we had previously, and spending time with these account executives. We had, I would say, in the end, probably 80 of these account executives actually working on the project team, building out these product pages so that we could take what was in their heads and get it online. So that was a pretty cool part of the experience. And I feel like it's, everyone talks about omni-channel, but I feel like there were some very tangible steps taken in the last few months to make this all come together.
Well, Ben, you hit on something there that we really wanted to kind of talk about. It was actually the very first experience brief of the 5 we kind of defined, which is like frictionless commerce, right? Yeah. How do we kind of think about it? And we really had to look at that because no matter what, there is going to be friction, especially when it comes to our customer understanding. So we put their needs before the business needs, actually, to try and figure out how do we kind of help them in that consideration phase. And so, I remember brainstorming with you around just how might we, we thought about the PDP being that entry point, because there's going to be some people that land there with a very specific point of view. There's going to be others that are trying to immerse themselves. And there's going to be others that actually had no idea they're even on DWR.com because they're coming through Google search or things. And so it's like, how do we romance intent and consideration as well as kind of help justify price? And so what we really created was like that system of product detail pages, obviously modular, which is pretty standard now. It's becoming more and more of a thing, but we really thought about how you kind of have from a tier A to a tier C, how do those things come in? What kind of needs do the customers have? Also, how do we think about personalization a little bit? But a step further was the idea of frictionless. And you talked about it a second ago. I think we spent more time focused on micro interactions than we did kind of establishing the design direction itself. It's like, what are the little moments of the site that aren't just going to surprise and delight, that are truly going to bring functional value to users? Not just to help them get through the funnel, but to really kind of meet their needs. And those little things really help. And then by bringing in conversational commerce, through live support with real trusted individuals, not only gives you that omnichannel experience through a digital means, but shows that extra level of care and comfort and to help with consideration that we really set out to solve. So I thought it was a really unique way that was authentic to your brand that we kind of went for, because what we see a lot of our clients trying to push on is, oh, this brand did it, so let's do that. Oh, this awesome direct-to-consumer company is doing that. But we strongly believe that the attributes and the personalities and the nuances that go into a site, yes, there's a kind of core best practices that have come to kind of be aligned with e-commerce, but that's commoditized, especially in a world where people are shopping more and more online. We have to find the things that are true to who you are and what you stand for to give people a reason to believe. And so I think that's going to be a thing that really drives loyalty and future revenue for the business.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And so, speaking about experience briefs, what we try to do at Basic is identify a tension or a challenge, right? And kind of go right at that with the experience and solve for that challenge. But again, you can't preempt everything, right? And of course, research and things that you put into the upfront of the project definitely go a long way in trying to prevent problems and challenges, but inevitably they come up. So I'd love to kind of shift gears and talk about anything that maybe was a surprise during the process or something that you learned along the way that you weren't anticipating that either you have to pivot around or just continue to grow. So any challenges or highlights, good or bad, that kind of just came up as you were going through the design and strategy process?
I'll let Ben start because he's seen it from both sides.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest one for me, which I think, I sit on a collective of chief digital officers, and I think this is a pretty common trait amongst people doing e-commerce transformations. And that is, you can have the greatest designs in the world, and you can have the greatest intent to solve all of these challenges, but it is feeding the beast with data and content that is really, really complicated and time consuming, right? And it's people won't realize when they look at DWI.com, but it's actually probably the filtering right? Your ability to filter by, I can search pink sofas, or I can search what's in stock right now, or I can search by family friendly. That is really important to customers. And it's easy in a meeting to go, yeah, of course, let's do that. But that means you have to tag, every single attribute. And when you're creating more and more attributes, you have to do more and more tagging. So, that is tough, right? And I'll be honest with you, we didn't quite have the manpower set up to meet the ambition of the design brief when it related to filling all this beautiful new real estate with the photography, with the copy, with the tagging, with the metadata that we needed to do. Right now, thankfully, we got pretty creative, and I alluded to it before. We had, our best expertise are our people on the shop floor, right? They're the ones living in. They know how to tag, these categories better than anyone, right? So we got very creative in unleashing the breadth of our team to do this, but it was a huge lift and pretty stressful. And I, we should probably come back to this on the kind of future of e-com. But I think it'll be interesting to see how that challenge plays out over the next 3 or 4 years. And certainly we're getting better at reorganizing our team to prepare, because as I mentioned at the outset, Emma, this is the first of many, many sites that we're rolling out, right? Yep. So we can't just be, it's not a one-time and done solution. We need to be restructuring and making sure we're on top of kind of best practices as it relates to getting that content and data machine happening. But I don't know if that's a thing.
It's so I think for you, it was interesting because you brought us in as a true partner. You had me meeting with Andy, even the CEO, in situations talking about in the roadmap. And so you were going through such a strong business transformation that there's expectation management that had to go on both sides. And so I remember us having some pretty stern conversations around timelines and what was realistic or not. And I think part of that wasn't just design and development, but the big watch out that I was flagging for you as well as others is always being mindful of content and data, like you're talking about, because you can have the most beautiful thing in the world. And like, how is your editorial calendar going to play a part? And with you guys, we helped establish new art direction. So it was a whole new thing. We had to think about what are we going to get reshot, which you guys did an amazing job on some of the shoots. How are we going to get more detail to help with the consideration set? But then also, how do we leverage legacy stuff? Because we can't reshoot everything. And so how do we think through that? And then who's populating it? And when does that happen within the design intent and stuff? And so I think some of those challenges and finding workarounds with you guys on how to think through that and just managing as we went with an aggressive timeline, which I still think we were able to turn around quickly together. And props to everyone on your team as well as your integration team for pulling this thing off. But I think that was some of it. And, Emma, to your other question, just around common pain points, I think there's always just interesting dynamics when an agency comes in to work with an in-house team. And I think that's what made this relationship so special is, we really championed co-creation and actually leveraged Figma to just leverage the best of the Herman Miller and DWR team, as well as kind of our team. In fact, we didn't staff a full design team. We actually kind of brought in design directors that actually were overseeing Ben's team in collaboration and kind of showing them how we think and do things so we could train them on some of our methodologies, as well as learn about their internal kind of operations, how they do things and the expertise they have in the work to really create a framework that they could take and progress on their own. And I think working through those nuances and the cultures that got created that way, it was a really special initiative in that regard.
And Matt, it's probably worth talking about, because I'm just thinking in terms of people who are potentially watching this, to talk about the tools that we use together, particularly Slack, which, people don't need too much education on, but especially Figma.
Yeah.
And just, how we work together both in an async and synchronous way. Yeah. There was some pretty unique stuff there. Do you want to kick that off?
Let's dive into it. Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been trying to just champion ways for agencies and partners to continue to collaborate, right? Because insource is a thing. And I think it makes sense for companies, especially the size and scale of Herman Miller, to have in-house teams, but there's always needs for expertise outside to come in. And we wanted to figure out how do we leverage resources to be value-minded for Ben, as well as to bring, the best of e-commerce to the site. And we just kind of looked at tools and ways we could collaborate. And so, we did a big on-site discovery at their offices. They came to ours, but honestly, we just kind of co-embedded together to create this thing with shared roles and responsibilities, with us kind of driving direction and their team helping execute. And Figma was a key part that enabled that to happen. So Figma is an online design tool that allows teams to create in real time. So you can have the software on the computer, but you can also see what's happening. It allows for presentations. So Ben could drop in at any moment and see what people are working on. And it really allowed our teams in different time zones to essentially extend the day, So they'd be working East Coast, they get ahead, get their notes, comments, we'd kind of work at our things, they'd be set up, and it just created this really cyclical progression of no need for presentations. It was all just integrated and co-creation. So we were able to, one, get a lot more done in a lot less time. And secondly, the work was a lot better because we could fully go deep. So we went wide and deep, which is rare to do in initiatives like this. So it just also created so much more transparency and just strengthened the partnership. And it was just one team kind of chasing the same goals.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest benefits of that from my standpoint is, I've always said that, digital transformation is kind of change management as much as anything, right? And the biggest part of change management is communicating, getting people excited, getting people to understand why we're doing things, letting them see what's happening ahead of it being launched. And so, the Figma wireframes and, having that available in real time. So I could literally say to, Eric, who's my head of design, hey, Eric, we need to present to this group tomorrow. Can you pull up the wireframes wherever they're at? Let's show them. That was a really cool thing to be able to do. Whereas, on prior projects, it's like you need a week's notice to kind of get everything ready for a presentation like that. So I think it allowed for really agile communication, which was nice. And certainly, the fact that both teams could see each other kind of making edits in real time was another thing that my team continued to talk about.
Yeah, it was great.
I think what's interesting is, what might be a good segue into sort of the future of e-commerce is this idea of agility and transparency, and how it really applies more than ever, as we all know, and as we're experiencing these new changes and this new emphasis on digital, not only in terms of how we work together, but also in terms of how we create experiences. And so, Ben, I don't know if you'd like to kick this off. I think we have probably a lot to talk about here, just even based on the previous couple minutes. But, as you just went through this big strategy and this transformation on the site, when you think about the future of e-commerce, what are you thinking about? What's cool? What comes to mind? Just kind of as it relates to the site that we just built even, and how is that successful? And I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I could go in a lot of different directions, but I'll throw around some ideas, and then Matt, let's bounce off each other. The first thing is around agility. And I think that COVID, more than any other time probably in the last 20 years, has kind of been an accelerant on digital roadmaps. That's I think taken most people by surprise, just how much it's accelerated everything that we're all working on. And I think from my standpoint, what that means is we're doing less building ourselves and more trying to find a partner who has already built it, or a partner that's a deep expert in that. So really trying to break up if you think about all of the work you need to do, trying to break it up into very small chunks, and then finding a partner that is the deepest expert in that chunk and partnering with them, right? Which I think if you're a brand, then you've really got to ask yourself, how are you researching the right partners all the time? And that was one thing that we did at the outset of this is, we researched not only our consulting partners or our support partners, but also, all of the different plugins that a great e-commerce ecosystem needs to have now to be best in class, whether it's, I spoke about chat a minute ago, whether it's, next generation financing, whether it's user-generated content, whether it's, reviews, refer a friend, analytics, all these things. You need to, in these days, have quite a large cohort of these different partnerships. So you've got to be really good at working out who the right partners are. And, I would say to people, the worst thing is to be on the back foot. These partners are very quick to email you every day. You should meet with us. You should meet with us. And if you're constantly responding to that, you can get into this downward spiral. You've got to be very, I think, proactive about what are your needs where you need a partnership. What are those chunks? Go out and do your own research and get customer testimonials on who is best. Then meet with those companies and then form your kind of posse of partnerships that you're working with. Then I think you need to be really good at vendor management. And I know it sounds kind of boring. You come into these digital roles to do the design and do the sexy things, but vendor management I think is a really important trait of these projects going forward. So that's more on the kind of managerial side, but I'd love to start talking about some features and kind of user experience that are likely to come.
One thing to that before we jump is your tech stack. As you mentioned, there are so many different options and things you need to truly create frictionless commerce experiences that meet service and emotional needs. And so it's how you're thinking about that, not building too much technical debt that you're having to reinvest. And so we've been doing a lot of pushback, candidly, with some of our partners around investing in, are they trying to be a software company or a services company? And what are they doing? Yeah. Because as you invest internally and create your own things, you're building debt that you have to now maintain. And will that work with different partners? And so I'm sure, Ben, in your role, you're constantly evaluating what that is and working with your tech teams to figure that out. But I think, as we look at the future of commerce, it's going to be scale and adaptation, because new tools are going to come out every day when innovation happens at the drop of a dime. So how do we make sure that our partners are setting that up? And that isn't just on the tech side, but it's also thinking about how you design the experiences to be able to integrate that technology, to be able to deploy things at speed. And so I'd say that one of the unique things we thought about when working with you is you were in the middle of this full digital transformation, right? And business transformation. And so we had to think not just about how the work we did for DWR was going to work there, but how it would scale over time and how it would change, not just aesthetically, but functionally, as well as across brands. And so, we actually designed out a series of about, I don't know how many modules, but we assumed that maybe 80% of them will be able to work across your family of brands. And then we also work with you to kind of define the art direction around them to give you more efficiency and scale so you can move at the speed of culture. And so I think that's a key thing as you look at the future of operational commerce internally, of how you think about moving forward. That'd be a big advice for any of the brand side listeners looking in, is how do you create scale? Because, we, as Ben mentioned, a lot goes into these things. And so how do you kind of adapt it and progress it over time?
Yeah, completely agree. But Emma, I'd love to go to more of the kind of customer facing.
Yep.
What's the customer experience going to be like with e-commerce? And I don't know if you agree completely with me on this one, Matt, but I still feel like in this day and age, even the best websites don't still work the same way the human brain works, right? Which is, I think the human brain is much more like, I have a problem, I'm going to go solve that problem. Instead, we've kind of been trained to browse catalogs, right? Which is actually really different from how we think. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fascinated by how design shifts to be more intuitive with how our brains work. And I think the obvious answer to that is e-commerce is going to become more conversational, right? Where if you look at what people say in these chats, and I spend time with my team, like going through the transcripts of these chats, obviously anonymized, but people they're talking about the problem they want to solve. I've got I've got guests coming over and I want to be able to do this, or I've got a new family member, or my toddler's reached this age and he's running into corners of coffee tables. That's how the human brain thinks. And so I'm fascinated by, I still think e-commerce, right? You look at Amazon, and full credit to them, they've done an incredible job, but it's very different to this kind of question and answer type exploration model. So I think that there is a really exciting phase ahead of us to get more intuitive. Matt, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. because, you know, people have seen the rise of chatbots and be able to kind of use AI to kind of give you recommendations that are one-to-one and personalized, understanding where you're coming from in your journey. I think all that stuff's kind of common stakes, but to take it a step further, it's like, okay, so what does conversational commerce feel like if you're on your phone or on your desktop still? How is it visualized to give it context? How is that truly become an experience that you want? Do I want to, just like if I was to walk into a DWR, do I want to browse on my own, or do I want someone to help me? How does that happen? And what kind of questions do you need to have? And so just thinking about how you design an experience and set it up with support and all the different things coming together to really kind of support an experience like that. It'll be fun to see who's willing to kind of progress and break the mold that Amazon kind of established, right? Which is kind of service people with a bunch of things, get them through the funnel as fast as possible and check out, which is great. But people typically have an intent there. They're going there with a specific need in mind. I need bleach. I need deodorant.
Yeah.
So what does it mean when you don't know what you're looking for? And you're in that evaluation stage, not even a consideration yet. And so how do you set up a site that's going to really kind of progress commerce by getting to know you and then giving you truly personalized recommendations or the illusion of personalized experiences? And I think there's different ways you can do that. I think, you know, product recommendations are one thing which can be powered by AI and machine learning, but there's also kind of giving people the path of giving them real-time results based on decisions. So making them feel like the progression towards getting something more robust towards them, you know, through filtering and tagging, but narrowing choice also is another opportunity to kind of progress towards that future state of where things can go. But no, I'm with you. I think that e-commerce is due for some change. And I think brands that are willing to kind of progress and try new things that might hit the line a little bit, might build more loyalty and long-term value over time. But the industry is going to evolve, especially as technology continues to progress and you can actually implement more kind of conversational aspects.
And just another quick thread there, which I think is consistent with how we did this project. I think going back 2 or 3 years, all the emphasis was on the homepage, right? To really try and lower your bounce rate, get people into the funnel. I feel like on this project, we spent far more time on the PDP or the product detail page. And I firmly believe that the PDP is more the focus of the next few years, because I do think getting people into the funnel and getting people to that where they're quite deep in that consideration phase will be augmented or supplemented or maybe even replaced by a lot of these conversations, these digitally enabled conversations. And so you're back and forth having question and answer. And then it's like, how about this? And then when you get there, you want a far richer product page. You want a more visual product page. You want way more information. You want to see more, you want to know how other users have experienced that, not just in basic reviews, but, the next generation reviews obviously have way more filters and tagging and imagery attached, which I think, this project is very in line with that. I think e-commerce is going to go more down that path.
Oh, absolutely. Look, we made a brand site for you that sells, because what we see DWR.com as is the central point for the customer experience around all the different ways they may interact with you, from catalog to in-store to social, right? And advertising, Amazon and beyond. It's a research tool as much as it is a commerce place to purchase. And so we had to really think about, like, what does that have and what's the richness that the customers expect? And as things continue to progress, and especially in a post-COVID world where you can't go into brick and mortar as much as before, and how does it evolve? So what are customer expectations now of a .com? You really need to be able to meet the needs that they had going into this to kind of align on that. And so the whole just here's a utility to shop doesn't work. What are the other mindsets? What's going to help them get through that decision kind of criteria to ultimately get them there? And, what is the customer journey now? How many points prior to purchase is it? They're on .com, they're on Amazon, they're back of mind, they got retargeted. There's so many factors that play in. And so the future of commerce is really kind of culminating all that together to, deliver the right information and the right products in the proper context. We'll always say that. But ultimately that's the role of the brand, is to kind of meet customer needs where they are.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I was going to ask too, kind of going off of that, Matt, what do you guys think? We talk about the brand experience as something that is all encompassing in terms of, in our case now, e-commerce and brand. But as we move forward and things continue to evolve and things are happening more and more online, what do you think the role of brand itself within the e-commerce experience and storytelling and inspiration will be as we move forward? Even thinking about how now so much shopping is done through social, where you're already immersed in story before you think about purchase. And how do we apply things like that to our e-commerce experience? And what is the role of brand?
I'm just going to say quickly that I'm a firm believer in brand. It's a way to differentiate. It's a little bit of loyalty. It's just a way to, again, connect culturally through the shared values and interests. I think what made this partnership unique is that we had those shared ideals. We both value authenticity, design, the craftsmanship, and the progression, and also the heritage that goes into kind of creating these things that can impact human lives. And so at a customer level, I feel the same way. So it's like, how do you elevate that? Because yes, there are cheaper furniture options out there, but it's about kind of bringing your story and your purpose. Just like if you're looking to kind of create new friendship circles, what is it about them that you're going to love and kind of align to? And how do you kind of bring that in? And so I think on a .com, the homogeneity of brands is something that is just becoming detrimental. And those that really invest in brand and find ways to differentiate and leverage that for long-term loyalty over a short-term sale are going to be the ones that win. But then, I'd love to hear your POV.
Yeah, look, I don't think I could have articulated it that well, but I 100% agree. I think it starts with values and why and what problems are you solving for the customer. But I think what's exciting, and I'm even learning this, and I think COVID has been a really great, it's obviously been terrible in many ways, but it's been a really interesting period to work through. Is about having a genuine dialogue, with your customers.
Yeah.
And not in a superficial, you can buy this from us way, but like, yeah, we're going through the same stuff you're going through, and this period's tough. And wow, social change is happening around us, and this is our view on social change as well. And there was a real moment, I think, where we went that next step as a brand. I'm talking about DWR right now during this period to become more honest and real in our dialogue. And I've never had more, at the point at which we started doing it, I've never had more friends kind of text me going like, I loved that. I loved your latest. And I remember there was one email that we sent out that like one of our most direct and much larger competitors just completely copied, like word for word. And because it was just so impactful and it was just us being real, right? And so I think, obviously, .coms, but particularly when you think about social and when you think about, email and other channels, just the opportunity for dialogue and connection is so important. And I think the tools are getting better to be able to do it. And I think companies are starting to realize, including us, just to let go a little bit and actually have a real conversation. And you guys have been fantastic on this with what's been happening, and I think it's a really interesting time in e-commerce for that reason.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to be mindful of time. How are we doing with any questions or anything? We kind of look at.
Read my mind. Yes.
Yeah.
I got like swept away on how interesting that was and just talking about empathy and where things are going. But yes, we do have some really great questions from viewers. So I think for the last 9 or so minutes here, I'd love to field some of those if you guys are down. So let's start with one from Brian King. He says, was there any thought to design for mobile experience first, or was desktop, tablet, and mobile designed in tandem?
Oh man, yeah, it was a hybrid. Obviously the mobile customer is one that matters, but you have to look at how people are shopping and behaving on the site. I think that's, far too often you kind of hear a marketing term or an approach or a best practice, start with mobile first, but you got to look at your audience and analytics, understand where and how people are shopping. And so for us, different groups approach things different ways, but we really thought instead about how things degrade from desktop down to mobile or mobile up, we thought about how each kind of form factor can really kind of meet the expectations of customers on that device. Desktop users are more prone to discover and browse, where mobile is typically more kind of spur of the moment, jump in and jump out of things. And so we thought about how to build a responsive site that scales based on kind of real estate within the form factor itself, but also based on user intention and behavior. And so our approach was really thinking about, again, customer needs and designing around those more so than just a design physical process.
Awesome. Another one from Anna was, when you tested the designs, were there some interesting findings that you didn't expect? For example, something that you thought would work, but actually turned out differently once you brought it into testing? Great question.
Ben, you want to start there? I can bring up a couple.
Yeah, let me think through, but maybe you kick things off.
Okay, it was navigation. We spent a lot of time thinking through different navigation paradigms from structure to categorization, taxonomy, language, as well as even visual representation. And some of the studies that we thought were going to far exceed others kind of fell short in areas. And it's really interesting, kind of seeing where and how they fall. Another one was just in the product configurator. Things that we think would be blatantly obvious that people would find, it was like the strongest thing like outside of people's minds when they were going through it. And so I think the fun thing is always design for the user and be receptive to their feedback, because even though when you're designing things, you kind of bring in your own personal bias. And so I think it was pretty humbling to continue to see real-time feedback and results in the thing. Ultimately, I think the site's performing pretty well. So I think we've done the right thing, but we're continuing to listen and progress. But yeah, definitely around navigation and just kind of architecture and hierarchy strategy that we thought would be very, very clear. It wasn't as cut and dry as we had initially thought.
Yeah, I want to touch on the taxonomy piece. I think it's, for those of you who are managing e-commerce sites, I think it's a really, really important tool and a really important piece of your design to focus on. And I'm really proud of how rigorous we were, in terms of, so we took our old taxonomy, we then benchmarked and created a new taxonomy based on benchmarks. So looking at what we believed were the best sites in the industry. Then we A/B tested the two side by side. The benchmark version beat our old version, right? Then we created a new version to compete against the benchmark version based on, other pieces of customer feedback that we were receiving. Our new version beat the benchmark version. We kept doing that 3 or 4 times to get to the taxonomy that we ended up with. And it's amazing when you can actually time, right? You give someone a task and you use tree tests, and you actually time how long it takes for someone to find what they're looking for in 2 different taxonomies. And we were finding like 10 to 15%, improvement in terms of the speed it was taking for someone to find a pretty standard product. So there's huge opportunity in getting this right. The other thing is we did a lot of this research immediately pre-COVID, and then we obviously launched the site during COVID. So we went and did it again, and we relaunched the taxonomy only 2.5 weeks ago. And the obvious change being work from home is far more prominent than it was. And that's been really important now. And we're seeing even better results as a result of that change. So it's a really important thing to focus on.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do 2 more here. Okay, so Timothy asks, how do you design a site to convert explorers and intenders? How do you map site entry points, qualify your visitors, and guide them accordingly?
Well, you start working with an awesome brand like Herman Miller, who does a lot of the research for you to kind of take in and identify insights. But again, it's understanding your business requirements, but putting the customer needs first. And so what we needed to do is kind of identify where the friction points are and design consideration sets around them. For someone that's looking for a specific thing, how do you make it as easy as possible to find that thing, get the information they're looking for, and then check out if they so desire? For someone that's kind of romancing intent and starting to look around, how do you facilitate discovery? How do you think about the different things they may be interested in? Because if you don't have that true one-to-one relationship, you got to think about how the site can be structured to meet those needs at a hierarchical goal. So is it product information up top, then inspirational content, then educational content, or is it social proof? So how do you kind of balance those things on a page and make sure you're giving someone an outlet to route them to other things? And so when we approached the design of this, we really thought about those 2 scenarios heavily, designed a modular framework that allowed Ben's team to go in and A/B test and kind of figure out what is and isn't working, how to dynamically serve content, again, in the right place in the proper context. And then ultimately just continue to iterate and get real feedback. Like our design process wasn't done in a bubble. We were constantly getting things in front of people to get their perception and also seeing if they were able to comprehend what we were presenting, because comprehension is a key thing. And a lot goes into it, but it's kind of small progressions and iterations over time is really how you end on things. Also, though, with that, we're big believers in putting something out there and getting real feedback. You can impression test and iterate and go until you run out of time. But ultimately, someday you got to ship things. And so intuition is massively important in this. And I think that's one of the things too that was brought to this project. It wasn't just data that defined everything we did. There's very much a strong human element and the emotional element about how we thought about the intuition of what we wanted the experience to feel like and ultimately kind of articulate. That would have gotten lost just in looking at data. And so it's really a strong line of balancing those 2 things of how does kind of data inform your intuition. and leveraging that to kind of create something special.
Great.
Hopefully that helps you, Timothy.
We'll do one more. Sorry, what's that?
I said, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that was great, Matt. Thank you. And I think we have a few minutes left and want to be respectful of everybody's time, but we have a two-part question, which might be a good one if we can keep our answers short to end on, from Brijan, who says, first, is this like an Oprah situation where everybody in the chat gets a free Eames chair for joining? I'll let Ben, probably not. I can speak for him on that one.
Look, would love to do that. But the one thing I will say, and I don't know which Eames chair she's referring to, but certainly the Eames Lounge and Ottoman, I think, is an incredible piece of furniture. And I think Larry Fink and Sergey Brin from Google are famous for saying that some of their best ideas were formed in an Eames Lounge and Ottoman. So that's a pretty good testimonial. But look, it's a product. There are very few products in the marketplace that actually go up over time, right? So yeah. What I would say is if you are considering that chair, it's an investment. It is a legitimate investment and is honestly built to last 300 years. It's something that your great-grandchildren will hopefully sit in. So yes, it's a little pricey and I hear you on that. But I think when you think about the true value of that product, it's pretty extraordinary and obviously an amazing piece of true iconic American design.
So the answer is no, we're not giving them away. You gotta buy it.
To be clear, the answer.
Yeah. And I have a feeling I know who this is. Okay, give us the second part of this question.
Well, the second part we have probably about 60 seconds left within the confines of this conversation. So if we can keep it short, this might be a challenge for you guys, but it's a great question.
Hang on, could I just say, is the second part of that question, can we get free consulting advice from Matt?
Oh, come on now.
The second part was, how do retailers keep a real relationship with customers when retail moves further online? That's a big one, but if you had maybe one or two words on that, what would we say?
Yeah, look, it's a challenge, right? And I think as a retailer and someone who's kind of sitting in the meetings all day trying to make business decisions, you've got to make sure that you have mechanisms in place to truly listen to customers, right? And I think the difficult thing is, like, when we start going down the AI route for chat, that's one extra step, and I think there's obviously AI to kind of triage, but then to actually answer all these questions, it's certainly something that we're trying to avoid, because we think that human to human connection is really important. But I think, starting your meetings with what are people saying in your net promoter scores, and how are people responding, and what are your most common complaints in the call center? This stuff is really important. And I think it'll still be important in 5-10 years time.
Yeah, I'll wrap it with, I've had a saying forever that says adapt or die. And I think brands must continue to kind of evolve their offerings and think about how their business model evolves, and I think the key is just going to be use the voice of the customer to define how you progress. Don't be afraid to make big leaps, because the requirements of today demand it. If you try and do things the way they were done even 8 months ago, you're already too far behind the ball. And so, you must continue to progress, iterate, and evolve, because their competitors are the brand you haven't heard of yet is going to excel at a crazy scale. So that's how you keep the customer first.
Great. That's a great place to end. I just want to say before we wrap, thank you so much, Ben. It was really great. And Matt, talking to you both, thank you so much for this conversation. It was hopefully really inspiring or informational or educational for all of you watching today. And thank you guys very much. And we look forward to hopefully doing something like this again soon.
Thank you so much, Emma, Ben.
Thanks Emma.
Everyone for listening in.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.